our industry has not always been the best at not doing that. And we've had some major setbacks as an industry because we'll just flippantly change something, and 2, 3, 4 years later, we're having issues because of it.
I mean, if you're saying the majority of the events that you're going to, it thins out at level 4, then really this podcast probably applies to a lot more people than we
A
think.
lot. Yes, you're not going to make everybody happy 100% of the time, but we sure could remove some pain points so that the parents left going, oh man, I still had a great time. And it wasn't just
Right.
we got whatever place.
All right, everybody. Well, welcome to Fireside Chat with the Johnstons. I'm Danielle, and I am excited to be here today with Craig and Heidi from the Open. So would you guys please introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Craig Hallmark. I'm the scoring director for the Open Championship Series, going into year 3 of doing this, I guess. So I've been in the industry for, 25-ish plus years, was a gym owner for 20 years. Do a lot of stuff on the school team side, and just excited to continue working in the industry.
Yep. And I'm Heidi Weber. I'm the executive director of operations and one of the owners of the Open Championship Series.
Awesome. Well, so you guys kind of got on this podcast by happenstance because I happen to be listening to 2 different things in the last couple of weeks, and the little Nancy Drew inside of me kind of got sparked. First off, I was listening to the CheerBiz podcast where, Heidi, you were talking about the AAU Junior Olympics opportunity that the Open will be providing.
Yep.
And you kind of made the comment, yeah, it's going to be level 1 through 3. Level 4 is kind of struggling right now. Mm-hmm. And then about a week later, Craig came out on the March Open scoring call and kind of talked about the changes that are happening for levels 4 through 7. And I think there were a lot of changes that we were all like excited about, and some that I think people were surprised about. And the decrease in requirement of difficulty is some of the stuff we were surprised about. But Craig made a comment also that said, a lot of gyms are kind of maxing out at 3 and having a harder time hitting 4. So I wanted to talk to you guys and see where is that coming from? What is the data saying?
Yeah. So I'll start and then hand off to Craig, because kind of that's how this whole thing kind of set off. We had been seeing over the last few seasons just a decrease in general with upper level, and I'll call it upper level 4, 5, 6 beyond, participation over the entire country, and noticing that there were these gaps. So from a business standpoint, I kind of started asking questions and looking at some conversations with gym owners and coaches, and trying to get feedback as to what was going on within the gym. Why are we seeing this despair, I guess, with this massive amount of participation in 3 and below, and then it just starts rapidly thinning out. And there was so much varying feedback, but it all kind of came back to the same thing, which was that they couldn't field some of these upper level teams like the 6s and beyond. 7 is not the most popular division, but it does obviously exist. So I hate to leave it out, but really it came from like that 6 and even 5, not being able to be fielded. Well, gym owners were talking about losing athletes after even 3, because if you had kids who were in your program and they were doing really great and really strong up until 3, but then you didn't have a level 5 or 6 team, they were catching on that they didn't maybe have a home team to go to beyond that. So that was one thing that was becoming like a repetitive communication. And then even what I think is even harder to swallow was literally not being able to field a level 4 or a level 5 or a level 6 team. So we had 2 pretty large problems that were occurring. We had gyms that were losing participation because either they didn't currently have these elite level teams. So their team participation was capping at 3 because they were like, well, why would I stay for 4 if I can't get to 5 or 6? Or they couldn't put a full 4 together based on the current rules and guidelines and required skills to be able to field winning teams, or even teams that had an opportunity to be super successful. So that was kind of my start of when I was like paying attention to this. And then I'll let Craig explain his, because on the flip side, he was also having his own discovery over the last couple seasons that we weren't even necessarily communicating about in different ways. So I'll let him kind of discuss that.
Yeah, so we basically, excuse me, we were noticing that the majority of the events we were going to really didn't have a ton of level 4, 5, and 6 teams at them. And we were just looking at the gym makeups and we were like, what is prohibiting these teams from getting that? So talking to coaches, talking to choreographers, and just gym owners in general, and asking that question, like, why don't you have an upper level team? You have very strong level 3 teams, Yeah. They're placing at our world championship. They are doing very well at all the events they go to, but you've been level 3 for years. Why are you not exploring level 4 and higher? And really the requirements they felt like were too strong and too hard. And so they did not feel that they could max it out on the difficulty side. So they didn't want to jump into that division after they had been successful at the lower divisions. So we were like, well, how can we look at scoring and adjust some scoring to where they feel like they can be successful? And if they're strong, then there's opportunities on our score sheet to still outscore teams that are weaker that are in those higher levels. But at least they feel like that they have a fighting chance with their strong technique, and they can field the level appropriate skills and get a high score with the requirements that we adjusted it to. So by eliminating basically elite level appropriate skills at that level, anything that's first legal at that level, and we have that rules doc or that document this year that says level appropriate skills. We didn't have that last year, but we added that again this year. That will help people understand that I can do these skills. And if I can do 4 of these skills, that's a stepping stone to maybe eventually get harder skills. And when we were looking at level 5 specifically, we were like, a full twisting switch up, it's really hard. It's really hard. But if a team can do a quarter twisting switch up or a half twisting switch up, then we need to give them some points for that. That needs to be rewarded somewhere. So being able to do those easier skill sets, but are still not easy skills. They're very difficult skills. We wanted to make sure that they could feel successful by getting that top baseline score. And then we adjusted that degree of difficulty booster that we have to where it's worth 0.4 now instead of 0.2. So the judge still has the opportunity to say, you did like an average difficult skill, but you did it with all of your groups. You did it with max groups. That's fantastic. We can give you somewhere in the middle there, or we can be like, you did really, really hard skills, what we used to call elite skills, and you did it by all your groups, then that might be warranted of that 0.4. So it gave that judge a little bit more leeway to give different point values, but allows the teams to feel like they're setting their teams up for success because they're at least able to start training those skills and get rewarded for them immediately versus, well, we can train these skills for years, but they're still not elite skills, so we shouldn't go in that division. So the feedback that we've gotten on it, we've talked to gym owners kind of all over the country, and they are super excited about it for the most part. There are little concerns still about the subjective portion of it. That's always a concern from all gym owners and coaches, but knowing that the judges we have in place are experts, they're getting trained, and we're educating coaches on the same thing that we're telling the judges, that hopefully everybody will understand where that subjectivity can kind of slide around a little bit.
Yeah.
So
sure.
I might be the minority because I love subjectivity. I'm like, bring back the creativity, the excitement of like, who's going to win. I do think that there's that level of subjectivity that makes cheer exciting. And it pushes us all to be more creative. So I don't oppose that at all, actually, but I understand I have an unpopular opinion there.
Well, I don't know that it's unpopular. I think there's a lot of people that believe that we're defined by that in some way. I think you've seen a lot of push over the last 5 years. It's a push and pull. It's not all push, but a push and pull on, well, we should have a code of points, or we should have, something similar to other sports. But it really is always kind of pushed back out because who we are and how we became what we are really had to do with that creative component, that, that subjectivity. Like, obviously you want there to be something that you can base how do you win, but not to the point where you lose. And I think we've seen that, right? Like we've seen these, ups and downs with really exciting routines and then some not so exciting routines because they're so formula, they're so systematic that it's not who we really are. So, I think this is another example, in my opinion, of how important it is for all of us to continue to evolve our sport and to listen and to pay attention to what's actually happening. Generations change, athletes change. The kids now have different priorities than maybe when we were athletes. Their expectations at home, at school, in life, they're all different. And so I believe it's really important, and I think we take it really serious at the Open Championship Series, that we have to stay aware. And so that's really where this came from is, hey, how do we continue to grow? Because we're always thinking about like, what does growth look like? What does sustainability look like? How are we getting people to get their businesses to be, and I know you guys, this is what you do, at Next Gen, you do this all the time, but how do we help people not just become successful, but stay successful? Because it's not just as simple as having a successful season. You're running a business. So this was one of those components that came up really with that measuring stick of, are we helping the industry continue to grow? And we kind of were like, we have to do something and set a new standard, because the feedback we're getting is that those levels are not growing. They're declining. Those levels are not seeing more kids. We even had gym owners saying they were losing kids in droves to just school cheer because there was just other opportunities for them. And so it's just, and not that that's bad, to each their own, but I mean, from a business standpoint, that's not what you want to hear. I'm going to go leave my competitive program and no longer be a customer to go to my only to my, sideline program. So I think we always try to have honest conversations about like, is there a solution or is there a possibility to help this out? And so it was fun when Craig and I kind of got together, because I'm like, what are your thoughts on this? And he's like, oh, 100%. We need to take a look, and here's what we're hearing. And so I think that's really exciting, because it means that one, the gym owners and the coaches trust us to share their needs and their concerns. And two, that we're still in a spot where we're able to come together, focus groups, talk to people, and make changes and get to reap the benefits of that. There's not a corporate sludge like slowing all that down. So that's been pretty cool with this, I think, as well. So
yeah, I think you guys really hit the nail on the head. So we're about to go into season 14. We've had a level 3 for 12 years.
Yeah.
We've had a level 4 one of those years.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
And it was really hard to get to that point. We're like,
Sure.
fantastic. We're just going to have level 4s from now until, we'll just always have it now. Well, realistically, we're in a town of 20,000 people. And pulling together athletes of that caliber is pretty challenging. But if you look at the United States, 80% of people are in a town of under 50,000, which is considered a small town.
Sure.
So being able to pull together athletes of that caliber without them going to those bigger cities, going to the bigger gyms, and being able to have that hometown gym is really cool. For us that year, it took 2 kids graduating, 2 kids going to volleyball, and all of a sudden we're like, we don't have the numbers to do it.
Well, and that was a conversation that Craig and I had. Like, I went to him and I was like, look, I don't want you to ever compromise our scoring, our rules, who we are, what we believe is best for a healthy evolution and legitimate sport. What are the pros or cons of removing some of these restrictions, and I think we're in a unique space because we did choose with scoring through lots of focus groups and conversations and all that, when we did exit and do our own, scoring system, to really give some heavy weight to technique. And that was something that we did because one, I think fundamentally our organization believed that was what should matter from a healthy sports perspective. But even more than that, we were hearing that backed up by, choreographers, coaches, gym owners, and, even the athletes themselves, because it's frustrating to, have excellent technique and lose to somebody over, one stunt fall or so, you understand all that. So when I went to Craig and I was like, what do we lose on this? Like by we'll call it loosening up the requirement. And, he was like, I don't think we really lose anything, because at the end of the day, if you're performing, especially, and we kind of started with 6, if we're being totally honest, we started at 6 and then we kind of were like, well, let's go all the way back to 4, because this is where the real problem is. If you can get into the required skills, you get to be competitive, but if you can't perform them well, you're probably not going to be the winner that day. So
Right.
we felt very confident that we were still holding up the integrity of why we did the scoring system the way we did. And it might sound to a lot of people silly, but that's really important to us. It's really important to us that we keep the integrity of the sport, and we're not just doing stuff because this season enough people complained about something that we just alter it, and then we don't think about the ripple effect of what happens. And I think I would say that our industry has not always been the best at not doing that. And we've had some major setbacks as an industry because we'll just flippantly change something, and 2, 3, 4 years later, we're having issues because of it. So
Well, and I think, you said you have to be able to do it well. Honestly, I think you have to be able to do it really well these days. Because if we look back at our routines 5 or 6 years ago, what would have scored pretty well back then, like it's a lot harder. I even stayed behind. We competed this past weekend and I stayed behind on day 2. I didn't go to warm-ups because I wanted to watch the teams and just say, okay, in junior 2, like we had a pretty good score. We've won with that score this season. And I'm telling you, we were like 7th.
wow.
And I watched those junior 2 teams, and I won't be surprised if all of them go to day 2, which is what we saw a few years ago. We didn't place very well in Kansas City, the last competition of the season. We went to the All-Star World Championship. We went to day 2, but so did all of those teams that were ahead of us because they all just happened to be really good, right? And so I stayed behind and I watched, and I'm like, man, I see it. Like I see the technique. I see those little things that like maybe my team was missing that these other teams have.
Yeah.
But 5 years ago, you would not have seen stuff like that. 5 years, I sent Craig, a heel stretch. I'm like, this girl's foot is touching her face. Like, what do you mean it's not flexible enough? And he pointed out a couple things. I'm like, all right, okay, I get it now.
That's awesome.
Yeah. With us emphasizing technique, I really think that has made a big difference in people really choosing to do skills that are solid and performed well and consistently. We don't hope it hits that day. Almost everybody's hitting zero routines, and they're expecting to hit their routine when they go out there.
Sure.
And then they're expecting perfection too. I mean, the coaches have been pushing so hard. The kids have been working so hard. And so we have just seen that technique get stronger and stronger, I feel like, over the last several years.
I think the beauty of this change with some of the upper levels too is that as a gym owner, I have to play that balance of, yes, we want to win, but you also need the challenge every year. And if you're level 3 and you're coming in the top 3 every year, but I can't ever level you up, that's a hard retention.
Sure.
It's a hard strategy. So I feel like this is going to give gyms, like it's almost going to open the door to say, okay, those of you who haven't had this level or haven't had it very many times before, 3 doesn't have to be the stopping point. 4 doesn't have to be the stopping point.
Right.
Now you actually, if you're teaching it well, you can retain the athletes and you can keep going.
Well, yeah. And I mean, with opening up 5 and 6 as well and making some adjustments with 5, like Craig said, this is just my opinion. 5 made it hard on 6 because there were just some things in between that were like, it's a delicate balance. You want to have the progression, you want to have the opportunities for growth, but 5 can make it hard on a gym to ever get to 6 sometimes. So, it's been opening up some of those requirements. We felt like we are inviting people to try again. Like, hey, we think this is an opportunity for you to grow. We want you to try again. We've made it, we'll just call it a simpler entry point. There's less of a barrier of entry. Go ahead and take that chance, and then you can continue to work on it. And, one of the things that really, and this probably was 3 or 4 seasons ago, we started talking about this. It really caught my attention was we had communications from very successful level 6 teams, athletes and their coaches saying their kids were breaking. I mean, their bodies were starting to fall apart. And so, 3-4 years ago, we started looking into what's the cost to the athlete? Are we doing the right things? And we made some, changes, and we tweaked some stuff then, and we tweaked a little bit more. But even now with opening up 6 the way that we did and making it a little bit easier to enter, we're hoping that we're going to progressively get to where the kids' bodies are able to be taken care of a little bit better. There's not as much requirements because, Craig and I had this conversation last season. I was like, with these quantities, like I'm not understanding, like, we've made it so that we don't have to throw, X amount of passes by the same athlete, but yet here we are, we're still seeing that same problem, right? We're getting to these routines and kids are like, well, I had to throw, three something to a double pass or front through to double or whatever. And I'm like, why are they still doing that? Well, what we realized, because I genuinely went to Craig and I was like, I don't understand. Like, we changed this so that people could have less numbers and they could hit these routines. And he was like, they don't have the athletes for it. Like, they're repetitive because they don't have it. And I was like, okay, we have a very different problem then. So that's you see, like, the progression of time it takes to, like, really get into these like, deep down issues and have the conversations to really find it. Because if you watch some of these teams I'm talking about that were communicating this, you would never know. You'd be like, oh my gosh, like, they must be dripping with athletes that can do everything, but they're not. Their kids are getting recycled, and they're trying to keep their businesses strong and keep their athletes in places to progress. But at some point, you got two knees, you got, one back, you got all these things. So we were like, what can we do to help with this? And so again, I mean, I'm sure some people listening to this will be like, man, this is a lot of talk about a few skill sets, but I mean, it really does have a huge ripple effect from 4 to 5 to, and so forth. And,
Yeah, well, and I really think, I mean, if you're saying the majority of the events that you're going to, it thins out at level 4, then really this podcast probably applies to a lot more people than we think.
A lot of
Because
people.
when I go to an event, and I understand Kansas City is kind of small, middle of the country. We're not talking East and West Coasts here, but when we go to an event, there really aren't a lot of teams. I think this past weekend, it was a huge competition, but I would say, I don't know, Craig, you might know more than I do, but it was half of a page, right? Half of a page of level 4 and up.
Yeah. And that's probably a lot, to be really honest, for the standard event right now. That's probably a decent amount.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers because I didn't really look at it yet, but I know we had about 175 teams there. I would guess that there were 25 of them that were level 4 and up.
Yeah. I would say that's a higher number.
It is a higher number. Yeah.
Events.
I'm at events at 250, and if we have 25, then I'm like, it's 10%. That's fantastic, because that's not.
Yeah. Well, our California friends are laughing at me saying it was a huge event, because for us, that is a big event in Kansas City, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I also think this is a good motivation for a lot of our teams, because going from 3 to 4 has always been a challenge, because you have that 4.2 that parents kind of finagle in there. They're like, well, what about a 4.2? And it's like, yeah, but my kids who have tucks or do have layouts, they don't want to go to level 2 for tumbling. They want to showcase the tumbling they do have. For us, it's always been that challenge of standing tumbling, right? Because it all had to be same section. And so this past week, I already kind of told, once that came out, I was like, I'm telling my kids right away. And so I went and told my U17 level 3, I'm like, guys, we can go 4 next year. This has allowed us to do it. It's not the stunting we ever had the issue with. It was that standing tumbling section. And, they're 16, 17, so they were goofing off at tumbling a few minutes later, and I pulled them all together and I said, unless you want those 4 to have to throw multiple standing passes, you all better get working. And that motivator was just there, right? They felt more motivated because if they do get it, they can add it, but it doesn't have to have that kind of pressure that, like, your whole team has to level down because you guys don't have the passes.
Right. You didn't have the percentage of kids, so you felt like you needed to go a level down. Whereas now, us not making you do the exact same pass at the exact same time, and including additional passes that might be a little easier for them to do. That's all going to be super beneficial to creating that level 4, that level 5, that level 6 team in the future.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said. There were gym owners that I was reading, and they were saying, like, we've worked so hard to get to level 4. Like, I hope they understand we've all worked hard to get there. It's just that some of us, I have 6 kids on a world's team an hour away from me now that I coached and got them to that level, and they had to move on because we didn't have the level that they wanted.
Right. Well, I think that it shouldn't be a deterrent by any means if you already are currently fielding a level 4 team. I mean, if it were me, I'd be like, I have an advantage because I've already been in this level. I'm going, and I've already met all these requirements. I'm going to push hard on that technique. I'm going to push hard on the elements that maybe I'm missing or, could tweak to do better. Like, it shouldn't be seen as a negative thing at all. And I think one of the things we've been hearing a lot this season as well, and, curious your feedback on it, but with so many divisions and so much splitting, there's almost no competition left. So it's like, I feel like this is another positive towards bringing more opportunity. So if I'm currently a 4, I want to be like, yes, because as we're like wanting to win a lot, and I get that, I understand it's a business, and we think we make, in my opinion, somewhat of a little bit of a mistake by associating winning with having a successful business. But, if we're wanting to have these experiences for our kids, you want to see more teams, you want to have longevity, you want to know, because on the flip side, we're getting on, how many teams are even going to come to this end of season option that are in my division? Because I don't want to travel or ask my parents to pay X amount of dollars. And I get it, but we can't have it both ways, right? We have to either bulk up a little bit on competition and be okay with we land where we land, or we have to be all right with, you might travel really far to see 2 teams. Like, and is that what you want? So our hope is this kind of does a balance of both. It's like allowing people to grow the division, but seeing a little more competition. But also, if you're already happy and 4 and doing great, push for 5. Then let's get you to the next place. So I hope people can take that perspective. I know change is always hard. I think this is a positive change. I think, it's nice to hear your feedback saying that you immediately went to your kids and gave them something to look forward to. That's what we want to know. Like, we want to see people's reactions, because we're doing what we believe the people want. So it's not because Craig and I don't tumble anymore. We don't have any, we're not doing any stunts anymore. So it's not for our benefit.
I slipped and fell the other day and broke a few bones.
Yeah, I mean,
really
I'll put a judge in
I was in a boot and a cast on my arm for 4.5, 5 weeks. But besides that kind of tumbling, I'm
contrary to popular belief, we're not currently on a team roster. So
nope, not even a parent team. Nope.
Yeah, no. Oh God.
Oh, yeah, they need to stay level 1.
Yeah,
parent team.
So hopefully it's not something people see as a threat, but as a positive.
Right. Right. Well, and realistically, it's a lot of different factors that come into play, right? Sure. I will never say we're the most competitive program. Almost every kid on my teams plays another sport. I'm okay with that. That was me as a kid. And so we provide a program where they can do that. Years ago, Dan Cotton said something that really stuck with me. You can do 3 things in a season, but you can only pick 2. You can win, level up, or have fun. And so that's literally on our application for tryouts each season. Right. What are the 2 most important things to you out of these? And we build our teams based for that. And, the teams that I had this past weekend that did not come in very good place, Youth 2 and Junior 2, I have 100% retention on both of those teams already, and it's April 3rd.
Wow.
So that's winning is important, but it's not the most important all the time. I think you need to be in a position where you could win. Right. It doesn't mean that you win every time, though.
Set up for success. Yeah, it's funny. I did a podcast with some tourism groups and hotels and cities. And, I made the joke, but it's really serious, how important it is for the full experience to be worthwhile to the athletes, their family, the gym owner as a business. And I said, because at the end of the day, like, there's only one winner per division, and everybody laughed, but it doesn't matter what sport you're in, whether it's cheerleading, dance, soccer, like you're there for a tournament for volleyball, you're still red robining it down to one team or whatever, a round robin, not red robin. That's where you get all the endless fries,
burgers,
but it's lunchtime. Round robin it, but bottom line is every sport, every activity, whatever the ultimate outcome is, there's only one of those placements. So to be successful as a business in this, you must create external enjoyment with the experience in the gym, the parents' experience, what's happening at the events. And I think especially in the last 5 years, we've all seen how important it is to cultivate that type of whole experience. But it's interesting that you said that about your teams feeling like they have they maybe didn't do what they needed to do or wanted to do this weekend, but yet 100% retention. So that means you're hitting every other experience point that is necessary for them to be like, I'm ready to go again. And not to plug the All-Star World Championship by any means, but that is how we created and why we created the All-Star World Championship the way that we did, because we were watching a industry where people were coming back right at the end of the season and just complaining and upset and didn't like their experience and were, this is awful and I'm spending all this money. And then they're literally like, and tryouts start on Tuesday when you get back. And they were like, how are you supposed to retain these customers when they're coming back dissatisfied? So we were like, how do we create an event where people, regardless of placement, leave feeling satisfied? Yes, you're not going to make everybody happy 100% of the time, but we sure could remove some pain points so that the parents left going, oh man, I still had a great time. And it wasn't just we got whatever place, because we knew they were literally walking out of our event and walking into deciding if they were going to come back the next year to that gym. So,
I think some of it too is how the staff at the gym is really setting the event. How are you setting the tone? At my gym, if you make it to day 2 of the All-Star World Championship, you would think we won the Super Bowl.
That's awesome.
Like, it doesn't even matter after that. They're just excited. I can understand if you're a gym that wins these huge events and you win NCA and you win these, big things, that maybe that's not enough for you. But I would say that's not the majority of the industry.
Yeah, for sure.
So, well, guys, we did have a couple questions submitted that I wanted to touch on for just a second here. One of them was, let's say I have brand new athletes. They've never done cheerleading before, but they do want to compete. Novice can be tricky because they're not necessarily ranked at most events. And then, if you get into prep, wow, guys, prep was something this year. There were some really good prep teams. So what options do people have with the Open Championship?
Go for it, Craig.
My suggestion is to explore our all-star rec divisions. So last year we separated out and have an all-star rec track and a competitive rec track. Competitive rec is more for those boys and girls clubs, YMCA, nonprofit type places. And then the all-star rec is just another avenue for an all-star gym to field teams that are a little less commitment level, little less expectation on the score sheet, good wide range of ages, and multiple levels. So it's just another opportunity for them to go in a direction that is not the elite or the prep, because prep, like you said, prep has gotten really wild. There's some amazing prep programs. Their whole program's prep.
That's right.
And so that all-star rec is just another avenue that has less requirements than prep a little bit. It still has tosses on it, so you get a train basket tosses. It's just an opportunity to maybe get that beginner group of kids in a program and in some kind of routine and practice, and and they understand what all-star is. They're part of it. It's kind of adjacent to it. They get scored. It's not like novice where they get just a ranking. They actually get a placement. So that's where I would suggest was fielding those all-star rec teams. There's less of them in the industry currently. I mean, it's something that we just launched last year. And so I think that is a really good avenue for the Open Championship Series scoring and events for them to look into those divisions.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like it could be a good option for half-year teams also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I coached a half-year team a couple years ago, and I actually thought it was extremely stressful. I'm like, we have less time to learn and, I air quote, perfect this routine before we get to a competition than even a prep team does.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. When I've had a gym years ago, sold it back in 2017, but we used to do our prep as 3 sessions a year. So we had a summer session and then we had a fall session, a spring session. If I still had a gym, that would be the all-star rec system.
Yeah.
We would have a summer session that we go to, just 4th of July stuff, community activity things, do a little performance here and there. And then in the fall, we go to competitions with another group. Spring, go to another competition with other groups. So,
yeah.
I think also, like, if I was entering into, if I was now new and having, or even just within the last few years, opened a gym and had new athletes coming in quite frequently, I would really encourage gym owners to embrace the idea of being okay with there being all different types of cheerleading in your gym. Like, that for whatever reason, we've had a struggle with wanting to push, even with prep, like prep went from being a introductory, lower cost, less time. Now it's basically just as, competitive as elite is. I mean, it's got, and that's great. Like, there's some wonderful programs, but again, where's the lower cost, I mean,
Mhm.
it makes it hard. If we could help people entering in now to really embrace that it's okay to have all-star rec teams and then have prep teams and then have elite teams and to be comfortable with, if you want to be all-star rec for your entire cheerleading career, that's totally fine. If you
Mhm.
don't, we don't need to add level 5 to all-star rec or level 6. Like, go move into elite. Like, it's okay to have kids be on specific types of teams and them to service a purpose within your gym and then allow them to move. And I think that's been difficult on us because we kind of, I don't want to say we did it backwards, but now that we know that we needed more options, we're kind of having to go back and fill in areas that probably would have normally been like, fundamentally built from the bottom up. We're kind of going from the top back down. I don't hear Jim saying like, I just need more elite teams. They're saying like, I need more points of entry for kids who maybe can't afford to participate in elite or like, for example, in your gym, you accommodate and probably are very a big cheerleader for kids playing multiple sports and
Mhm.
have a very strong, I'm sure, view on that. But there are kids now that they don't want to just do one activity. And so, there could be in your gym a place for that if you allow it and you embrace that that's what that is and you're not
Mhm.
frustrated by that, right? So that's something I think I would love to see us as a community like kind of push as a new wave of like build your business this way. Like, be okay if Susie only comes in for 3 years and she just did all-star rec and that's it. And then she moves on and that's totally fine. So those are just some things I think for new or even old gym owners that want to grow or revamp. Like, these are ways to do it because we've always done it this way. Like, the world is constantly changing. We have to
Yep.
change as well. So,
Well, I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of our next gen people know this. I didn't have those different levels of entry for a lot of years. We're a big
yeah,
rec tumbling gym. So
sure.
I have 600 kids in the gym,
Yeah,
but
so you're
a lot of rec
profitable is what
tumblers.
you were gonna
Sure.
say.
Yeah,
You have
that
rec
too.
tumbling, so you're profitable. Good job, Danielle.
Hey, we teach them how to do it in cheer too, but
No, I
yes,
know
rec.
you do. I know you do, but I think a lot of people
Yeah,
still to this day do not understand that.
right.
So,
Right.
yep.
So in 2019, I only had 28 cheerleaders.
Yeah,
Like that was my program. And it
sure.
wasn't until we started defining the programs a little bit differently that I started seeing that growth. And it went from 28 to I think we'll probably have 170 this year.
Wow.
Because we defined that. And for
Yeah.
the first time in, 5 years, I have 3 kids on my mini elite team that are like, hey, we're going to go prep next year because she wants to still cheer, but she also wants to try volleyball.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh,
Great.
yeah,
Yes.
what a
Yeah,
perfect scenario. You don't have to quit just to play another sport.
that's right. Well,
So,
Craig, and he doesn't really mention it anymore because it's maybe, been a hot minute since he owned a gym, but Craig was extremely successful. Him and his partner were extremely successful in their gym with finding, way before this was a popular thing to do, finding the right places and the right teams to field and where to take those teams and how to be
mhm.
successful. And honestly, Craig, you really should teach a class on that in the future. I mean, I know that everybody goes to you for scoring, but one thing, if you knew him then and saw the successes they had, they were intentional, they were deliberate, they were done with a plan of action. And so I think sometimes we forget about that. And to your point, Danielle, where there's a balancing act as a gym owner, I'm coaching a child for X amount of years and they're not progressing, they may have the skill, but they can't progress to the team. I mean, Craig did an excellent job at being able to take all different levels of kids and make really big successes. And I think that's something we need to go back to, that creative type of team
Hmm.
fielding. We really do. So,
Yeah, I see a bunch of stuff that you guys push out with next gen, and I'm like, I learned a bunch of this stuff so late in the gym ownership
mhm,
like
mhm.
portion of my career and life of that I was like, it's amazing that you guys are able to share that knowledge and share that information with so many people because I'm like, that's exactly how we were successful. That's exactly what we were doing to succeed and to grow our business and to grow our bottom line and to be able to offer our staff more things and our kids more things. And it's so interesting to see the parallel that I see from your program, Danielle. And I'm just like, it's so interesting to see that. But Yeah, we hung out around 100 kids, 125 kids, sometimes down to 80 kids for our elite program. We weren't a massive gym or anything, but we had a lot of success, and we were
Yeah,
very,
Yeah.
very, very fortunate that we created a really good program.
Yeah. And I think, it depends how you define success. Like,
that's right.
I
Right.
thought when I had 350 kids, I'm like, oh, I feel kind of successful. But I think if we ever hit 500, I'll feel super successful. And then you
Mm,
hit 500 and you're like, this isn't really success either. It's like success
right.
isn't defined by the
The
size of the
number,
gym or
exactly.
the size of
Yeah.
your facility. I heard somebody the other day say, like, if you don't have a problem with cars in your parking lot, like, I've never heard a successful gym not have a problem. Like, my parking lot's 2 acres. I don't have a issue with cars in
Right.
my parking lot. Like, that doesn't define my success. So yeah, it's always been such a good question to figure out like because Craig, I imagine that regardless of how many kids you had, do you feel like you had a successful run at owning a gym?
Yeah, I mean, to me, success was defined by the relationships that we built with those families
Yep.
over the years and the culture that we created. And we won a lot of really high level events also, and we did very well for several years, But besides that, to me, the success was the relationships and the friendships and the culture that we created for those kids and those families. And so
Yeah.
I feel like we were very successful with that.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm way too young to actually have this, but like I have like cheer grandchildren now, like they're in our
Yeah.
toddler program, and
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
it blows my mind just a little bit. So we
Yep.
do have one final question. I've held you guys on here for quite a bit. So one last question for you that was submitted, and that is, do you plan to expand end of season events outside of Orlando? I know you do have Galveston and Branson right now, but that leaves the whole coast on each side open.
Yeah, so we did have a West Coast option for 3 years. We were in Anaheim and then we were at Universal in Hollywood. Unfortunately, we were unable to have the Hollywood event, not any reason other than the movie studio lot, because unlike Orlando, which is a massive facility, the Hollywood facility is actually a live working studio. So they're constantly filming. I mean, you literally, when you go on the back lot, it's like, this is The Rock's office and this is where they filmed Ellen. I mean, it's crazy. So that one we unfortunately couldn't keep going because they were going under some new construction for some new studios. But we have talked about and are looking into what are some other locations. We also, I don't know if you know this or not. I don't know if how far back in the history of this organization you go, but when we first started, our fundamental belief was to offer predestined, I guess, open locations so that people could base their decision at tryouts on where they were going to attend. And so we come back to that each year. We do have, of course, Prep and Rec Grand Nationals and the Open inside Universal, but that's a theme park event. So it comes with a price, it comes with park tickets, it comes with things that not everybody is desiring. And then, of course, with the All-Star World Championship having such large participation, we kind of got away from having as many open locations. So we do have these conversations regularly, and we are currently looking at for 25, 26, if we will be adding some additional locations. Branson is always fun, but again, it's you really don't have more than 100. You can never really have more than about 150 teams at that event, no matter what.
Mhm.
And then Galveston is always a blast, and that event sells out every year at a couple hundred teams. So we have looked at possibly joining forces with some more of our event producer friends and putting some opens possibly back in the East Coast, and then as well as possibly, I won't say West Coast, but Western. So
Yeah.
we are looking at that for sure. And those are great events. They're great family destination events. They're great pre-planning events. When you compete all season, you get discounts as you compete. So
Mhm.
you can have $70 off your registration just because you're going to events. I mean, there's a lot of really positive things that come with attending one of the open locations. Kind of to what I was speaking to before with gym owners, if we could also identify and embrace the types of teams that should be attending particular
Mhm.
events. I see every once in a while, and like, maybe ASGA or some of the threads will say stuff about like wanting one particular thing that, fits every team, but but the great thing about having such an open marketplace now and having so many options is that you get to pick what's actually best for your program or your teams. And we shouldn't ever want to go away from that. We should want to continue to allow that. So I think that's another area, like if we could help gyms embrace that it's okay for you to send 2 or 3 teams to the All-Star World Championship, but then send 2 or 3 to an open location. I know it can be hard if you don't have a lot of staff. I do understand that, but it's something to think about for even when you're fundamentally building your relationships with your family, what the expectations are. You know, we travel kids so much now that, like you said, with prep, it's so competitive. I mean, we created an entire prep event just because it's so competitive. So we are going to have some more. I know this is a really long answer for that, but I do think it's important that when we add these locations, that we help gym owners understand that to make these events healthy, there has to be participation. And that means we need to look at the industry as a whole and say, you know, listen, I'm all for everybody and their dog coming to the All-Star World Championship that is elite. I'm all for it. Yeah. And I have no, people say, oh, you shouldn't be able to go if you don't score XYZ, or you should, hey, listen, if you want to come just to get the experience, like I support that. It's a cutthroat event. I mean, we cut people. Like there are little kids crying in bathrooms after announcements. Like the first year I had to exit a bathroom very quickly because I was like, there's a 7-year-old in here crying and I'm the one who did this to them, I mean, just kidding, obviously. But I mean, it's a hardcore event. If it's not for you, you shouldn't apologize for that. Like, that's okay. If you want to go and have a great time at the beach and do it, So I just think that it would be great if all of us could work together to help each other understand and embrace that, because we need for growth and sustainability more options. And I've seen some gyms do a great job with that. They'll, especially some of the really successful, and I mean monetarily successful, like, we'll call them small gyms, whatever you want to say, but 150 kids, 175 kids or less. And they're moving around. They're going different places. They're doing different experiences. And those same kids are coming back every year after year. And they're going, well, this year we get to go to Hollywood. Next year we're going to the All-Star World Championship. The next year we're going to the beach. Some of these kids have never been to the beach, so that might be more exciting than going to another convention center, So to make a long story short, Danielle, that was a really long answer. I apologize, but yes, we have some more options that we're looking into.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, because we have not been the gym that always goes back to the same place now.
Right.
The All-Star World Championship has kind of become the thing for my elite teams. But before that, we had competed in Hollywood at not even an official end of season event, but we took a team there. We took a team to Virginia Beach. We've been to Vegas. We've been to Dallas multiple times, New Orleans, just a fun location so that people could get new experiences.
That's right.
And I think that's great. I will speak to Branson. It's not really that expensive to go. And there is no other place that I can think of that you could see 16 girls ride a bicycle than at the Acrobats of China. So
that's awesome.
Recommend.
I love that. I also tell people too, I've told people to go to Branson because it usually is almost still like in season. And I'm like, what a great inexpensive way, because you're getting credits anyways. So if you use your credits, if you're getting $50 or $60 off, take a team, even if they're going to the All-Star World Championship, there's rings and jackets and all kinds of stuff. And we've had a few programs over the years do that. And they're like, man, that was a great idea, because it was just another additional event for them to attend. And they were able to basically have this like send off to their what their true end of season event was going to be. And they were like, man, I'm so glad I did that. And they did it at $90 or $80 or whatever a kid, because they had those credits. So, one of the things I'm really excited about working with you guys and Next Gen on too is to be able to have these open conversations, because I think it's important for gym owners, event producers, the people of the industry to start sharing ways to help each other. And so I think this is going to be a really positive partnership because of that.
Yeah. It feels like huge gap is being filled by you guys. So,
well, thank you. And guys, I'm excited too, because I'm not a fan of keeping up with the Joneses. I think you have to forge the path for your gym and set, what you want your program to be. And I think you guys have created a lot of really great opportunities to do that. I know some of the coasts don't always have the option yet, but I know Dan out there in Pacific Northwest is pretty jealous sometimes of the great independent event producers that we have. So I'm really grateful for it. And I know that everybody east of the Mississippi gets a lot of, especially gets a lot of cool opportunities.
Right.
So for those
Yeah.
listeners who maybe haven't tried any of those events that kind of fall within the Open Championship Series, I would recommend them for sure.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And I will actually see you guys here in just like 2 weeks. It's not stressful at all as a coach. Of a mini team. I will see you guys in just a couple weeks at the All-Star World Championship. And Craig, I hope to not see you there at all.
That's right. I
hope
like
not
that.
either, but come stop by, say hi.
Definitely.
Anything during those
That's
days.
right. I love it.
Definitely. As long as I don't have to talk to you about inversions, I'm in.
There we go. There we go.
All right. All right, you guys. Well, thanks so much. And I will see you guys then.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.